In this tutorial, I want to discuss trying to use your acrylic rulers to get the most accurate cuts. So if you're cutting fabric, you probably have some sort of a cutting mat, and you can see the grids on my cutting mat. It's a self-healing mat, and you can pick those up at any craft store. Joann's, I think Walmart sells them, Amazon. At any rate, along the side of the cutting mat, there's numbers. Each square marks off an inch. So it counts all the way up, so you'll each line, it'll number 1 through however the size of your board is. I have several of these. So I have one that goes to 36, and this is one that actually fits together with several others to create a very large space if you want to lay it out on a big table. So I have lots of different acrylic rulers and squares that I can use. I have big ones. This is a 12.5-inch Omni Grid. That's the brand of this. Move my light out of the way here. On this ruler. So you can see that it numbers 1 to 12.5. It's 12.5 by 12.5. It's nice if you want to true up squares. I use it to cut small pieces. I like this better than my rulers. I have some different ones. I have some short ones. I have some really long ones. This one runs, it's a yard, you can see there. And this is great for cutting long lengths, but if I'm cutting something small, I don't want to mess around with this skinny of a ruler. I have another one that's wider, and I like this one quite a lot. It has a lip right here on the edge of it that you can put against your cutting board so that it doesn't scoot around as much. So the purpose of this, though, is for me to tell you, when I first started cutting fabric, the biggest error, and it took me forever to figure this out, was using the grid on my cutting mat to measure the fabric and cut it. So if it said cut 6 inches by 3-inch, piece for a project, I would try to line the fabric up exactly along here and use the mat as the ruler. And when I would piece things together, it didn't always come together the way that it should. And there's two things that are going to really matter when you go to piece something together, and especially if you're doing any sort of a quilt type project, it's a domino effect. So if you get one thing off, you're going to continue to find that error come back and haunt you over and over as you continue on down the project. So two things: cutting, you want accurate cutting, and sewing. Your seams need to be accurate, because even if it's off 1/8 of an inch, I mean, you will see it over and over. Things will not line up, and you'll have to jimmy it and try to figure it out, or take it out and redo it, and it's frustrating and makes it really not fun to deal with. So what you need to do is use your acrylic rulers or your squares. This I bought at Joann's. I've had it for a long time. I actually have a couple of these. I think I have a 4.5 by 4.5 square too, and then I have like a small 4-inch or 6-inch acrylic ruler. I don't recall exactly, but I have several of these different things, and I use them for different things. I'll use this to trim and true up the edges of a quilt before I bind it after it's finished, because I like being able to use this perfect corner here. So I'm cutting 2.5 by 1.5 inch width pieces, and in a prior video I discussed pressing those pieces. And there's something I probably should have touched on the last video, where I kind of quickly glazed over, press it to one side, usually the darker fabric, etc. Okay, I probably should have mentioned, because when I first started sewing, because I had read this somewhere, and I'm a self-taught sewer and quilter, so I've done a lot of different research and just, you know, tried and true type stuff. I used to press everything open like this, split those seams, because it told me to, because there were articles and, you know, tips that I'd read from other people that sewed and quilted, and they said, yeah, you've got to press this exactly open, split all the seams, because you'll have bulk, and you don't want bulk in your quilt. And that is simply not true. As a matter of fact, that creates a weakness, because you don't back stitch when you're quilting quilt pieces, because you're going to stitch across the edge the other way, so there's no purpose. It locks it in, right? So if you're splitting this, you're weakening this. It's not back stitched. It's gonna tug at the fabrics and pull them apart. Press them to one side. It doesn't really matter which side you press them to, but always press them to one side. And also it helps you, like a couple of videos ago, I was talking about the perfect quilt points and how to sew those together so that they, you know, come together just right, like this, these points. If, you know, you use those as guides, and you can visit that video if you want to see how to do that. So back to cutting this. So there are so many lines on here. I love these rulers. They're so helpful. You can actually see what I'm doing here. So I need to cut this 2.5 inches wide. I don't know if you can see exactly, and it just kind of, see? Perfect. So I'm lining up that bottom and then that side, so you know that it's going to be square. I use Ginger for my my rotary. I have a Fiskars. I don't care for it. These are amazing. There's other brands out there that are good. All of my scissors that you'll see me using, I have, I don't know, like 4, 5 maybe different kinds of Ginger scissors, and then I have this rotary cutter. And again, Joann's is my hot spot, so I get the replacement blades for these on Amazon, and I think they're like $10. They're awesome, but it does have a guard, and anytime you're not using it, keep that guard up, because this will take the end of your finger off. It's extremely sharp. So press down on your ruler so that it's not going to move. So hold it down tight with one hand, and then nestle this blade up against the acrylic ruler and just take it up. And you'll have exactly what you need. Do not use, I'll do one more here. I need a 1.5 piece, or excuse me, inch piece on this. And again, you can see the bottom follows and then this follows. I'll do a video about how to start with a bigger piece of fabric. I'll do another tutorial about that, about how to get started with making those initial cuts. Is you go to the store and you order yards and yards of fabric, and then you're just trying to figure out how to maneuver this huge piece of fabric, and I'll have to do a video and show you about that. If there's any other videos or questions that you have, please put them in the comments and I'll try to answer them. Or if you have suggestions for something you want me to do a video on, where I can help you out, I'm happy to do that. Please just let me know. Thank you, and happy quilting.